back to the deep dive. We're really excited to jump straight into another fascinating topic today. We're pulling again from Dan Ariely's Predictably Irrational. Such a great source.
Absolutely. And today we're zoning in on Chapter 8. It's titled, Keeping Doors Open, Why Options Distract Us from Our Main Objective.
Right, and it tackles this question that I think probably hits home for, well, pretty much everyone. Why is it so incredibly hard to close off options? You know, even when it seems totally logical, maybe even beneficial, to just shut that door.
It's a deep-seated thing. So our mission today is really to unpack the insights here. We've got history, personal stories, some really cool experiments O'Reilly ran.
Yeah, should be good. It really digs into this sort of irrational behavior that shows up everywhere. Ancient battles, modern life, you name it.
It really does. So where should we start? Maybe with that historical example.
Let's do it. The story feels almost alien to how we operate now.
Yeah.
Picture this. It's 210 BC. There's a Chinese commander, Shang Yu.
Right, Shang Yu. He leads his army across the Yangtze River. They're going to attack the Qin dynasty. They cross over, set up camp.
And then the next morning, the soldiers wake up and, well, it's a bit of a shock, isn't it?
Understatement. They wake up and see their ships, their only way back across the river, are on fire. And not just that, he's had all their cooking pots smashed, too.
That is intense. Why? What was the goal there? Just pure shock value.
It was way more strategic than just shock.
Yeah.
It was brittle, yes, but incredibly focused. Burning the ships, that meant zero retreat, no going back. That option was just gone.
Okay, no escape route. And the pots?
Smashing the pots meant they couldn't just dig in, cook rations, and wait things out. Their only option, their only path was forward. Fight and win, or die trying. Nothing else.
Wow, talk about commitment, total focus. Did it work?
Amazingly well. It created this incredible, almost desperate focus. His troops fought like never before, won 9 battles straight, and basically crushed the main Qin army. That complete lack of alternatives channeled all their energy.
So he eliminates options, forces focus, and gets this massive success. But Ariely's point, and this feels much more familiar, sadly, is that we tend to do the exact opposite, right? We have this powerful urge not to close doors.
Precisely. It's almost a compulsion. We want to keep every alternative alive, even if it comes at a real cost.
Think about it in, everyday life.
Okay, like what?
Well, buying that piece of tech, maybe a computer or phone, with tons of extra features, expandable memory, all these ports, stuff you'll probably never actually use.
Right, just in case. Or getting the super extended warranty on an appliance.
Yeah.
You pay extra for that peace of mind, even if the odds are you won't need it.
Exactly. Or, and this one's big for parents, signing kids up for absolutely everything. Piano, soccer, coding club, scouts, trying to keep all those potential talent doors open.
Yeah, definitely see that. Or even choosing a car, like getting a big luxury SUV, not because you actually go off-road, but because, well, you could. The option is there. And the point Ariely makes so clearly is that these options aren't free. The warranty costs money. The SUV costs more upfront and uses more gas. All those kids' activities cost a fortune in fees and, maybe more importantly, time.
And there's that trade-off, isn't there, for us, for the kids? All that breadth, sampling a bit of everything, it often means sacrificing depth. You don't get really good at one or two things because you're spread so thin.
Yeah, you're just dabbling. In trying to keep every path open, you might not really commit fully to any path. The book flat out calls it a fool's game. And apparently we're pretty good at playing it.
The chapter makes this really concrete with a couple of student stories. There's Joe, this MIT student, facing a major choice.
Joe sounds like a classic case. Super smart, obviously, being at MIT, but torn. 2 paths. Architecture, which he loved, versus computer science, which felt more practical, secure job prospects. His parents were keen on it.
And the crunch was the courses were totally different. You couldn't really do both.
Not easily, no.
Yeah.
The requirements were incompatible. So picking one really felt like slamming the door shut on the other. Unless he wanted to, tack on an extra year of tuition and time, which is a huge cost.
Oof, that's tough. The idea of eliminating a whole possible future.
He was apparently in agony over it, just paralyzed by the need to choose to close one door. He did eventually pick computer science, but interestingly found a way to kind of blend them later, designing nuclear subs, which is, wow, quite a niche.
That is a blend. But yeah, it shows that early decision paralysis perfectly, that feeling of, I can't say no to this possibility. Have you ever felt that, facing a choice like that?
Oh, absolutely. Career choices, even smaller life choices. It's that FOMO, isn't it? Fear of missing out.
Totally. And then there's the other story, Dana. That one's maybe even more stark.
Dana's situation was about relationships. She was trying to get a new really promising relationship off the ground.
Okay.
But she just couldn't quite bring herself to definitively end a previous one that was, by all accounts, kind of fizzling out, not really working anymore.
Oh, man. So she was basically risking the good new thing by clinging on to the not so good old thing. That sounds incredibly stressful and, like the book says, predictably irrational.
It really is. Airlie apparently asked her point blank, are you really willing to jeopardize this new, potentially great relationship just on the tiny chance you might someday regret leaving the old one? And she knew, logically, the answer was no, but emotionally, she just couldn't cut the cord.
It's that holding on to things, commitments, relationships way past their expiration date, even when they're actively hurting your chances at something better. That
Yeah.
resonates.
Definitely. So, okay, these stories are powerful illustrations, but how did Airlie and his colleague, Zhuang Shen, actually try to, like, measure this impulse in the lab?
Right, the experiments. Because anecdotes are one thing, but can you isolate this door-keeping behavior?
They came up with this really clever computer game, simple idea, called the door game. You start in a central area, and there are 3 doors on the screen, red, blue, green. Clicking on a door takes you into that room. Once you're inside a room, every click earns you a little bit of money, somewhere between 1 and 10 cents. The goal: make as much cash as possible in 100 total clicks. Oh, and moving between rooms costs you 1 click.
Got it. So, logically, the best strategy seems pretty clear. You pop into each room briefly, figure out which one pays out the most per click, and then just stay there and click away for the rest of your 100 clicks, right?
Yeah.
Maximize the earnings in the best spot.
Exactly. And when they ran a basic version where the doors just stayed there, didn't disappear or anything, people generally did that. They mentioned a participant, Albert, a violinist he sampled, found the high-paying room, and mostly stayed put. Rational. Sensible.
That's not the interesting part, is it? Things changed when the doors could actually disappear.
That's where it gets fascinating and, frankly, a bit weird. They introduced the disappearing doors condition. Now, if you didn't visit a particular door for 12 clicks, it would start to visually shrink on the screen, then poof, vanish forever.
Oh, the pressure, that little shrinking icon. I can feel the anxiety already. So what happened? What did people do then? They mentioned Sam, the hacker.
Sam's reaction was typical. He'd start clicking in, say, the blue room, making money.
Right.
But then he'd notice out of the corner of his eye the red and green doors starting to shrink. And he just couldn't stand it.
He couldn't let them close.
Nope. He'd frantically jump to the red door, click once or twice just to keep it open, then see the green one shrinking and jump over there. Then maybe back to blue. He was constantly switching, bouncing between rooms.
That sounds exhausting. The book uses that great phrase, like a harried parent rushing kids from one activity to the next, just trying to keep everything going.
It's a perfect analogy for the feeling. And the key finding wasn't just that it felt frantic. It was actually really bad for their earnings. It was economically damaging.
How bad? How much did they lose by trying to keep all the doors open?
Significantly less. On average, participants in the disappearing door version made about 15% less money than those where the doors just stayed open. 15%.
Whoa.
And here's the kicker. They calculated that these frantic switchers would have actually earned more money if they had just randomly picked any single room at the very beginning and simply stayed there for all 100 clicks, even if it wasn't the highest paying room.
That's really something. Just think about that for a second, listeners. Think about it in your own life, maybe your career. Are you jumping between so many potential opportunities, trying to keep every possibility alive, that you're actually doing worse overall than if you just picked one thing and really focused on it, even if it wasn't the perfect thing?
That's a powerful question.
Yeah.
And they really tried to push back against this behavior in the lab. They thought, okay, maybe if we make switching more costly, they increase the click cost to move between rooms.
Did that stop them?
Not really. Then they thought, okay, maybe people just don't know which room is best. So they explicitly told participants the exact payout rates for each room. Full information. Surely that would make them rational. Still didn't fully stop it. They even gave people lots of practice rounds. But that deep-seated impulse to keep those doors from closing, even doors they knew weren't the most profitable, it just persisted. These are bright MIT students, remember. They understood the math, but they still wasted clicks, lost money, trying to prevent loss.
It gets even weirder, though, doesn't it, with the next variation, the reincarnating doors.
Oh, yeah. This one really highlights the irrationality. Okay, so in this version, doors still disappeared if you ignored them for 12 clicks. But they weren't gone forever. If a door vanished, you could just click on the space where it used to be, one single click, and boom, it reappeared. It reincarnated.
So the cost of letting a door close was minimal, just one click to bring it back. There was basically no permanent loss.
Exactly. No real penalty.
Hmm.
So logically, you'd think, okay, fine, let the low-paying doors close. If I ever change my mind, it costs me almost nothing to reopen them. That would be the rational approach, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So surely people stopped frantically switching in that version.
You would think. But incredibly, no. People still wasted clicks rushing around to prevent these easily reversible doors from even starting to shrink. They couldn't tolerate the idea of the door closing, the visual cue of the option fading, even when they knew it had virtually no real consequence.
That's amazing. It wasn't the actual loss they feared, but the feeling or the symbol of the loss.
It seemed so. That visual representation of a closing door was just too powerful, overriding the logical calculation of maximizing their earnings. Wild, isn't it?
It really is. Okay, let's maybe zoom out from the game. What does this tell us more broadly about, life?
Well, it connects nicely to some ideas from the philosopher Eric Fromm. He wrote this book, Escape from Freedom, way back, arguing that a big problem in modern life isn't too few choices, but actually too many, an overwhelming abundance of options.
So the pressure isn't scarcity, it's opportunity overload.
Kind of. We feel this constant pressure, Fromm argued, to sort of do everything, explore every potential talent, try every experience, keep every possible future self alive, develop ourselves in all directions at once.
And as Fromm saw, and these experiments seem to graphically show, that often just leads to us spreading ourselves incredibly thin, right?
Exactly. And it's not just about juggling genuinely important options. The compulsion, as we saw with Dana, or even just like feeling you have to check out a sale before it ends.
Oh yeah, the sale ending, that's a closing door.
It is. We feel compelled to keep even options of little worth open, just because they're options and they might disappear. Buying stuff we don't need just because the opportunity is closing.
And the flip side of that, which the chapter touches on and is maybe even more important, is that while we're busy chasing all these maybe trivial closing doors,
We might be completely neglecting the really important doors that are also closing, but much more slowly, almost invisibly.
like what?
Like your children's childhood, it slips away day by day. There's no flashing countdown timer. Or the quality connection with your partner may be eroded gradually by neglect. These crucial doors close so slowly, there's no shrinking icon, no alarm bell, until one day you look up and realize they're shut, maybe for good.
That's a sobering thought. There's that anecdote in the book about the friend whose marriage actually got better when they had to live apart for a while.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive, but it makes sense in this context. They only saw each other on weekends. Before, when they lived together, weekends could get filled with errands, chores, catching up on work.
With sort of ambient time together.
Right. But once their time together became strictly limited and scheduled just the weekends, that time became incredibly precious. They knew the clock was ticking on that weekend visit, so they fiercely protected that time, focused on enjoying each other, connecting. The limitation created focus and value.
It makes you wish almost that we did have some kind of alarm for the truly important things, doesn't it? Like a little notification. Warning. Quality time with teenager opportunity shrinking rapidly.
Wouldn't that be something? It highlights that maybe the biggest challenge isn't just managing the number of options, but correctly identifying which ones are truly valuable and have a limited shelf life, and then consciously choosing to focus there, even if it means letting other, less critical doors close.
Okay, but what about when you've actually done some narrowing down? You've maybe eliminated the bad options, but now you're stuck between two that seem pretty similar and both pretty good.
Ah, yes, that's another layer of this paralysis, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sometimes the hardest choice isn't good versus bad, it's good versus slightly different good. The small distinctions suddenly feel huge and you just get stuck.
The book mentions that classic philosophical thought experiment,
Awesome.
Buridan's ass.
Right. The poor donkey, hypothetically placed exactly halfway between two identical delicious piles of hay. It can't decide which one to go for first because they're equally appealing, and so it starves to death, paralyzed by indecision.
It's a bit extreme, maybe, but it captures that feeling perfectly. Being frozen because the differences are just too small to make a clear choice.
And we see real-world versions of this all the time. Airily mentions the U.S. Congress getting totally gridlocked over tiny, minor details in legislation, debating endlessly while the core issue maybe doesn't get addressed.
Or his friend, who spent 3 months trying to decide between two digital cameras that were apparently almost identical in features and quality.
Exactly. 3 months. And in both those cases, Congress, the camera friend, the crucial mistake is forgetting about the cost of not deciding.
What do you mean?
Well, for Congress, while they're arguing about comma placement, maybe necessary highway repairs aren't getting funded, and that delay has real-world consequences, maybe even costs lives. For the friend, agonizing over tiny camera differences meant 3 months of not taking pictures, plus all the wasted time and mental energy spent agonizing.
Right. The tiny differences between option A and option B become the only thing you see, and you completely lose sight of the massive cost of the delay itself.
Precisely. The actual difference the final choice would make might be negligible, but the cost of indecision is huge in those situations, honestly. Flipping a coin, figuratively speaking, making almost any quick decision would likely be better than staying stuck. But we can't stand to close that other, slightly different, perfectly good door.
It's so ingrained. And maybe the ultimate proof of how deep this runs is Aureli's own story, right? About choosing between MIT and Stanford.
Yeah, that's the perfect ending to the chapter, really. Here's the guy, the expert, who literally researched and wrote the book on this specific irrationality, and he finds himself completely caught up in it. He spent weeks agonizing over whether to stay at MIT or move to Stanford. Two fantastic options, very similar in many ways.
So what was he doing during those weeks?
Driving himself crazy, basically. Comparing every little detail, neighborhoods, schools for his kids, departmental vibes, trying to find the absolute mathematically perfect choice, seeking out every last bit of data.
And the result? Did he find the perfect answer?
The result was that his actual research, his productivity, just tanked during that period. He was so consumed by optimizing the decision about where to do his work that the work itself suffered badly.
Wow. So it really does affect everyone. Even when, intellectually what's happening, that pull is just incredibly strong.
It really underscores the point. It's not just about logic. It's about this powerful, uncomfortable feeling associated with closing a door, losing an option, whether it's a life-changing career move or just watching a door shrink in a computer game.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up, this deep dive into Chapter 8. What's the big takeaway message?
I think it's that we have this really potent, often deeply irrational drive to keep our options open. And while it feels like flexibility, it often just makes us busy, distracts us, costs us real time and money, and stops us from truly committing to the things that matter most.
And that struggle gets even worse when we're faced with choices that seem very similar, leading to this painful, costly indecision.
Right, so the implied advice, really, even though Airly acknowledges how hard it is that learning to consciously choose to close doors is vital, especially the ones that aren't adding much value or are actively draining energy. It's a skill we need to cultivate.
A skill for gaining focus, cutting down on stress, and actually, getting somewhere meaningful, even though it fights against a very basic instinct.
Absolutely. It means pushing through that discomfort of letting go, but the potential payoff in clarity and real progress seems huge.
Okay, so here's maybe the final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. Take a look at your own life, your work. Can you identify any open doors that are maybe just hanging around? Doors that might be subtly sucking up your energy, distracting you, keeping you from putting your full weight behind something else that's truly important.
And ask yourself, what's the real cost, not just in money, but in time, focus, maybe even happiness, of keeping those particular doors slightly ajar?
Just identifying them might be the first crucial step. Wow, okay. That was a lot to think about. A really fascinating look at our weird relationship with options. Now, next time on the deep dive, we're moving on to Chapter 9, the effect of expectations.
Ooh, that's another great one. How what we think will happen can fundamentally change what we actually experience.
Exactly. Get ready for some mind-bending stuff about how anticipation shapes reality. We really hope you'll join us for that next exploration.
Until then, maybe give some thought to those doors. See you next time on the deep dive.